What transpires when one of Tinseltown's most esteemed performers encounters a talk show presenter who declines to display fundamental courtesy? Well, prepare to observe one of the most awkward broadcast moments ever recorded on live TV. Harrison Ford, the icon who gave life to Han Solo and Indiana Jones, stepped onto The View anticipating a standard promotional discussion. Instead, he encountered something wholly unexpected. Before we delve into this remarkable tale, ensure you tap that subscribe icon and share your thoughts in the comments about how this entire scenario played out. The studio spotlights burned intensely that morning as Harrison Ford settled into the well-known seat opposite the group of hosts. He had performed this routine countless times before, publicizing his newest movie to viewers nationwide. The View was meant to be just another stop on his media circuit, a cordial conversation about his career and forthcoming projects. But from the instant Joy Behar began speaking, it became evident this would be far from ordinary. Well, look who's joined us, Joy started, with her trademark grin. Harrison Ford, the guy who's built a career repeating the same role endlessly. The other hosts squirmed uneasily in their chairs. This wasn't the warm greeting they had practiced during the pre-show briefing. Ford's publicist, positioned just out of camera view, felt her heart sink. She had explicitly instructed the producers to keep the dialogue light and professional. Ford's expression tightened subtly, but his tone stayed composed. I apologize, Joy, but I believe you may be mistaking me for someone else. I've portrayed a wide variety of characters over my career, he responded. Oh, really? Joy leaned in, clearly relishing the moment. Let's see, you've got the cranky pilot in Star Wars, the irritable archaeologist in Indiana Jones, and the surly detective in Blade Runner. Sounds like a trend to me. The audience fell silent, sensing the mounting tension. This wasn't the light-hearted exchange they anticipated from a morning talk program. Ford glanced at the other hosts, hoping one might redirect the discussion, but they appeared immobilized. Joy, I came here to discuss my new film, Ford said, his voice carrying a cautionary note. Perhaps we could focus on that instead of whatever narrative you seem to be pushing today. But Joy wasn't retreating. In fact, she seemed to be gaining momentum. Narrative? I don't have a narrative, Harrison. I'm just stating what I observe. You've been relying on the same few roles for decades. When was the last time you truly pushed yourself as an actor? The question lingered like a poisonous fog. Ford had faced tough interviewers before, but this felt personal, like an assault crafted to embarrass him on national television. You know what, Joy? Ford replied, his renowned composure beginning to fray. I've been acting for over 50 years. I've collaborated with some of the finest directors in film history. I've played everything from carpenters to presidents, and I've never once felt compelled to defend my career choices to someone who earns a living gossiping on daytime TV. The studio went quiet, save for the faint hum of the cameras. Joy's face reddened, but instead of retreating, she doubled down. Gossiping? Is that what you think this is? I'm posing legitimate questions about your career, questions your fans deserve answers to. Or are you too much of a diva to handle a bit of honest critique? Ford rose slowly, his chair scraping the floor, the sound reverberating through the hushed studio like a thunderclap. Honest critique? Is that what you call this ambush, lady? I've faced critics who actually understood their craft. You're not even in their league. Sit down, Harrison, Joy snapped, her voice escalating. You don't get to intimidate me just because you're some big movie star. This is my show, and I'll ask whatever questions I want. Your show? Ford's voice was now perilously soft. Your show is a farce, Joy. You spend your days tearing down people who actually create something, while you contribute nothing but negativity to the world. At least when I play a cranky character, I'm paid to act. The other hosts finally found their voices, desperately trying to defuse the situation, but it was too late. The damage was done, and Joy Behar was not about to let Harrison Ford have the final word. You think you're superior to everyone else, don't you? She retorted. You think starring in a few hit films gives you the right to look down on the rest of us? Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Ford, your best days are over, and everyone knows it. Ford's hands balled into fists at his sides. For a moment, it seemed he might completely lose his composure. The tension in the room was stifling, and everyone could sense they were witnessing something that would be discussed for years. The silence following Joy's harsh remark about Ford's best days being behind him felt endless. You could almost hear the heartbeats in the studio audience. Ford's publicist was frantically signaling the producers, but they seemed paralyzed by the unfolding drama. This was no longer just an uncomfortable interview, it was a historic moment in television, and not the positive kind. Ford slowly turned his head to face Joy directly, his eyes narrowing with the intensity that made him iconic in countless action scenes. But this wasn't a film, this was real, and the anger simmering in his gaze was authentic. My best days are behind me? Ford repeated, his voice barely above a whisper but carrying more menace than a shout. You want to talk about best days, Joy? Let's talk about yours. When were those, exactly? When you were bombing on stage with stand-up comedy no one laughed at? Or perhaps when you were clinging to whatever scraps of relevance you could find by attacking people who've actually achieved something? Joy's mouth dropped open. She had clearly expected Ford to either back down or storm off by now. She hadn't anticipated he'd retaliate with such precision and venom. "How dare you," she stammered, her usual confidence faltering. "You know nothing about my career or my life." "I know enough," Ford shot back, still standing over the panel like a judge delivering a verdict. "I know you've built whatever career you have by tearing others down. I know you hide behind this group of women, thinking it gives you a shield to say whatever cruel thing pops into your head. And I know that, deep down, you're probably miserable, because happy people don't spend their time trying to make others feel small." The other hosts were practically shrinking in their seats now. This had escalated far beyond anything they'd ever seen on the show. Whoopi attempted to interject with a joke to lighten the mood, but her words faltered when both Ford and Joy glared at her simultaneously. "You think you can psychoanalyze me?" Joy's voice trembled, whether from rage or something else was unclear. "You don't know the first thing about me, you arrogant has-been." "Has-been?" Ford actually laughed, but there was no warmth in it. "Joy, I earned more money last year than you'll see in your entire life. My films are still screening in theaters worldwide while you're sitting here gossiping about celebrities to fill the empty hours of housewives' lives. If I'm a has-been, what does that make you? A never was?" The studio audience gasped audibly. Several people in the front row covered their mouths in shock. This wasn't just a disagreement anymore, it was character assassination broadcast live to millions. Joy's face grew redder with each passing second. "You think money is everything, don't you? You think because you landed a few big roles, that makes you some kind of deity? Lucky?" Ford's voice rose for the first time, and the sound made everyone in the studio flinch. "Lucky, lady? I spent years working construction jobs and taking minor roles in terrible films before I got my break. I earned every single role I've ever had through hard work and dedication. You want to talk about luck? How about the luck of landing a job on national television despite having no qualifications except a willingness to be cruel on camera?" The producers were frantically gesturing from the control booth, trying to signal the hosts to cut to commercial, but Joy was too far gone to notice. She had started this fight and was determined to finish it, even if it ruined her career. "At least I don't phone in my performances," she snarled. "At least when I show up to work, I actually try to do something interesting instead of just collecting a paycheck for mumbling through the same tired routine." Ford stepped closer to the panel, and for a moment, it seemed he might reach across and grab Joy by the shoulders. His face was flushed with anger, his hands trembling slightly. "Phone it in? You want to see phoning it in? Look around this studio, Joy. Look at this pathetic excuse for a television program where you sit around all day talking about other people's lives because your own isn't worth discussing. You call that trying? You call that interesting? This is the most pitiful waste of airtime on television, and you're the reason why." Joy shot up from her chair, finally matching Ford's standing position. The two faced off across the panel like duelists in an old western, the tension between them so thick it could be sliced with a blade. "Get out," Joy said, her voice low and dangerous. "Get out of my studio right now. We don't need you here. We don't need your attitude, your insults, or your washed-up movie star ego." "Your studio?" Ford laughed again, that same cold, humorless sound. "This isn't your studio, Joy. This is a soundstage where they film your little gossip session. You don't own anything here except maybe that chair you've been warming for years, contributing absolutely nothing to society except making people feel worse about themselves." The camera operators were capturing some of the most dramatic footage ever recorded on daytime television. This wasn't just a celebrity interview gone wrong, it was two public figures demolishing each other live on air, and everyone watching knew they were witnessing something unprecedented. "You know what your problem is, Harrison?" Joy's voice grew higher and more shrill with each word. "You can't handle someone finally having the courage to tell you the truth about your mediocre career. You're not the hero you play in the movies. You're just another aging actor who can't accept that nobody cares about you anymore." The words struck Ford like physical blows, and his face went pale. For a moment, he looked genuinely wounded, as if Joy had found a deep vulnerability and stabbed it. But then the hurt transformed into something far more dangerous, a cold fury that seemed to fill the entire studio. The silence following Joy's devastating remark about nobody caring about Ford stretched on for what felt like forever. The pain that had flashed across his face was replaced by a chilling calculation, suggesting he was about to unleash something that would end this confrontation once and for all. The studio audience held their breath, sensing the climax of this unprecedented television disaster. Ford's voice, when he finally spoke, was so soft that everyone strained to hear him, but his words carried the weight of 5 decades in Hollywood and the wisdom of a man who had seen the industry from every angle. "You want to know what nobody cares about anymore, Joy? Nobody cares about bitter, talentless people who make their living attacking others. Nobody cares about washed-up comedians who never had anything funny to say. And nobody, absolutely nobody, cares about your opinion of my career or anyone else's." Joy opened her mouth to retort, but Ford raised his hand, and something in his gesture made her stop speaking for the first time since the interview began. "I'm not finished," Ford continued, his voice growing stronger. "You asked when I last challenged myself as an actor. Let me ask you something, Joy. When was the last time you challenged yourself to be a decent human being? When was the last time you used this platform to uplift someone instead of tearing them down? When was the last time you looked in the mirror and asked if you were making the world better or just adding to its ugliness?" The other hosts were completely still, afraid to move or speak. This had gone so far beyond anything they'd ever experienced that they didn't know how to process it. The camera operators kept rolling, knowing they were capturing something that would be replayed and analyzed for years. Joy's hands were trembling, whether from rage or something else entirely. "You sanctimonious hypocrite," she spat. "You think you're so much better than everyone else, don't you? You think starring in some films makes you some kind of moral authority." "Moral authority?" Ford's eyebrows rose in genuine surprise. "Joy, I never claimed to be a moral authority. I'm just an actor trying to do my job and treat people with basic respect. But apparently, basic respect is too much to ask for in your world. Respect has to be earned," Joy shot back, her voice nearly a shout. "And you haven't earned anything except a reputation for being difficult and demanding on every set you've ever worked on." Ford's laugh this time was different, warmer, as if he'd just realized something amusing. "Difficult and demanding? You know what, Joy? You're absolutely right. I am difficult when directors want me to half-effort a performance. I am demanding when producers want to cut corners that hurt the final product. I'm difficult and demanding because I care about the work, because I respect the audience enough to give them my best every single time." He paused, looking directly into the camera for the first time. "And you know what else? I'm difficult and demanding when people like you try to tear down everything others have worked their lives to build. So yes, I'm being difficult right now, and I'll keep being difficult until you learn to show some basic human decency." Joy was practically vibrating with rage. "Human decency? You want to lecture me about human decency? You're the one who's spent the last 10 minutes insulting me and my career on national television. I'm responding to your attacks, Joy. There's a difference. You started this by trying to humiliate me for no reason other than your own amusement. Everything I've said has been in response to your deliberate cruelty. But here's what really bothers me about people like you." Ford moved closer to the panel, his voice dropping to a whisper that carried more authority than any shout. "You hide behind the idea that you're just asking tough questions or offering honest criticism. But that's not what this is. This is you trying to hurt someone because it makes you feel powerful. This is you using your platform to be cruel because you think it makes for good television. And the worst part? You probably don't even realize how damaged you must be to find joy in causing others pain." Joy's face briefly crumpled, as if Ford's words had struck something deep and vulnerable she usually kept hidden. But then her defenses snapped back, and she was on the attack again. "How dare you try to psychoanalyze me, you pretentious fool? You know nothing about my life, what I've been through, or why I do what I do. You think you can waltz in here and judge me based on one conversation? One conversation?" Ford's voice was incredulous. "Joy, this isn't one conversation. This is who you are. This is what you do every day on this show. You attack people, you mock them, you find their weak spots and press until they break. And when someone finally stands up to you, you act like the victim." The control room was in utter chaos. Producers argued over whether to cut to commercial, end the interview, or call security, but no one could decide, paralyzed by the unprecedented scene. "You want to know what I think?" Ford continued, his voice building to his final statement. "I think you're jealous. I think you're bitter and jealous of everyone who's built something meaningful while you've spent years sitting in that chair, gossiping and complaining and contributing nothing positive to the world." Joy was shaking with fury. "Jealous? Jealous of what? Your failing career? Your string of box office flops? Your desperate attempts to stay relevant in an industry that's moved on without you?" "No, Joy," Ford replied. "You're jealous that people remember my work with fondness. You're jealous that when people think of me, they think of characters and stories that brought them joy, excitement, and wonder. When people think of you, what do they remember? What have you contributed to the world besides negativity and cruelty?" The question lingered like a challenge. Joy opened and closed her mouth several times, but no words came out. For the first time, she was speechless. Ford nodded slowly, as if her silence confirmed everything he suspected. "That's what I thought. You know, Joy, I came here today to talk about a movie I'm proud of, one I hope will entertain people and give them a brief escape from their troubles. That's what I do. I try to bring a little magic into the world." He gestured around the studio with clear disdain. "But you take that magic, grind it into pieces, and scatter it to the wind. You take things that bring people joy and make them seem small, meaningless, and stupid. And for what? Ratings? Attention? The sick pleasure of watching people squirm? Joy found her voice again, but it was barely a whisper. You can't talk to me like this. You can't come onto my show and attack me like this. Your show? Ford's voice built to a crescendo. This isn't a show, Joy. This is a public execution disguised as entertainment. This is you and your panel judging everyone who walks through those doors. Well, I'm not going to sit here and let you execute me for your audience's amusement. He started walking toward the stage's edge but stopped and turned back one final time. You know what the really sad part is? You probably think you won something today. You probably think this confrontation makes for great television, but all you've done is show the world exactly who you are, and trust me, it's not a pretty sight. Joy was on her feet, pointing at Ford as he walked away. Don't you dare walk away from me. Don't you dare turn your back when I'm talking to you. Ford stopped but didn't turn around. I'm not walking away from you, Joy. I'm walking away from this toxic environment you've created. I'm walking away from the kind of television that makes the world uglier. And I'm walking away from people who think cruelty is entertainment. You think you're so much better than us, Joy shouted after him. You think you're above this show, above me, above everyone else. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. Big Shot movie star, we don't need you. We never needed you. Ford turned around one last time, his voice calm, almost sorrowful. You're right, Joy. You don't need me, but maybe you need to take a long, hard look at what you've become and ask if this is really who you want to be, because if it is, I genuinely feel sorry for you. With that, Harrison Ford exited the set of The View, leaving behind a stunned audience, a group of shell-shocked hosts, and one of the most explosive moments in daytime television history. The cameras kept rolling as Joy stood pointing at empty air, her face a mask of rage and humiliation. The other hosts tried to salvage something from the wreckage, but it was too late. The damage was done, and everyone watching knew they had witnessed something that would be discussed for decades. What did you think of this astonishing clash between Harrison Ford and Joy Behar? Have you ever seen anything like this on daytime television? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe for more incredible celebrity stories you won't find anywhere else. This is the kind of raw, behind-the-scenes drama that reveals what really happens when the cameras are rolling and the gloves come off.